If we haven't met yet, my name is Jim Flynn, and it's my great honor and privilege, really, to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Simsbury Free Library. And on behalf of our board, our staff, our members, our volunteers, I'd like to welcome you to the library for today's special occasion. We're going to dedicate our trustees room, which is right in through there, to the memory of Peg Donohue. I just would call out one special guest today, Harvey Mosher, who's sitting over there, a board member emeritus who for many years led the financial end of our operations here. And it's great to see Harvey here. Last winter, when Peg passed away, it was certainly a sad occasion. Sad for her family, sad for her friends, sad for her colleagues. But as I recall, the funeral mass was also billed as a celebration of life, and I think that was very apropos. Because what a life. Like most people, I guess I realized that Peg had been involved in a lot of things, governmental things, charitable, et cetera, a pace setter, a pathfinder, if you will, a woman ahead of her time. But it wasn't until I saw the obituary really sitting there with all of it collected on one page that I appreciated what a terrific person she was and how much she had contributed to the community and to life in general. But I really couldn't help but think when I looked at all of those organizations, governmental, non-governmental, charitable, social, etc., that nothing in there probably meant more to her than the Simsbury Free Library. I really think she loved this place. This was very special to her. I think she loved the building, which she referred to as the gracious yellow lady on Hot Meadow Street. I know she loved the idea of a library, and if you knew Peg, you knew she was an avid reader, voracious reader, very interested in history, politics, ideas, what have you. And I think she also saw it as a community center, a great place for folks to gather. Now, the library has a long history. Come on in, Bob. And there are really 4 years in that history that stand out, I think. 1874, when the library was founded. And I'll give you a teeny bit of history. In 1874, that gentleman up there named Amos R. Eno, who was from Simsbury, had made a lot of money in New York City in real estate, came back, did a lot for the town, and did over the generations. But one thing he did was to endow a library. And in today's parlance, I think we'd call it the public library. But back in those days, most libraries were subscription libraries. You had to be a member. But there was a free library movement. And what Amos Eno did was give 10 trustees in the town money to buy books and have the people be able to use it freely. The next key date, I think, will be 1890, when Mr. Eno again came forward, donated the land that we're standing on that he owned, and this building, which at the time was a tremendous gem. It was designed by a young Hartford architect named Melvin Hapgood, and as you know, it's in the colonial revival style, which was very popular in those days. So from that point forward until the mid-1980s, 1986 to be particular, that's what this was. It was the public library, and probably many people here used it as such, even as children, etc. But by 1986, the town had grown geometrically, but the institution of the Simsbury Free Library, finances and building hadn't. So a parting of the ways had to happen. And the town came in, took over the public library function, moved down the street, built a beautiful building. 20 years later, had to build another beautiful building because it kept expanding. And that left the Simsbury Free Library with a real quandary, what to do. So Peg was chairman of the Board of Trustees in those days, and from what I understand, I wasn't here, but about 2 years of very hard work, a lot of imagination, ingenuity. And 2 years later, in 1988, what came out at the other side was what I would call the new Simsbury Free Library. It wasn't called that. But this building had been refurbished and restored to essentially its original condition, correct colors, et cetera, et cetera. And because the endowment documents require that the building be used for a library, the trustees, PEG leadership, came up with the idea of, instead of a circulation library, what about a research library? So the Simsbury Genealogical and Historical Research Library was born. So 3 decades on now, I think PEG and the trustees that were responsible for that decision would be fairly happy. The building is in great shape for a building as old as it is. Financially, we're stable, and I should just thank everybody here who made a donation in PEG's memory in that regard. And thirdly, as a community center, we've never had more going on. A couple of years ago, we sort of changed our operational model. Tara Wilrup, PEG's daughter, who was a trustee, vice chair of the board, really took over as the chief operating officer, if you will, not with that title, hands-on. Got a tremendous staff, several people part-time, and they really make this place sing. So right now we have book clubs, movies, artwork, gingerbread houses. We publish maps of the Simsbury, the Farmington Canal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think on all 3 counts, we're going strong. Now, just a personal word about Peg's style and one of my interactions with her. She retired from the board after many years, at about the same time that I was retiring from my job. And the chairmanship was empty, and several of the trustees suggested I might take over as the chairman. And I said, you know, that's an honor, but I don't think I really want to. I'm not sure what I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so the office remained open for a couple of months. And then I went to the Simsbury Land Trust annual dinner. And I walk in, and there's a great seat in the front row. There's a guy who wrote a book about Collinsville, who was going to be the speaker, and Peg, and an empty chair. And I sat down, and we had a pleasant conversation. And kind of in the middle of it, Peg looked at me, and she goes, you know, Jim, you really should become the new chairman. I said, well, Peg, you know, it's an honor, but I don't think I'm really that interested in it. And she said, no, I really think you should. I said, I understand, it's a great honor, but I'm not really sure it's the right fit and all. And she put her hand on mine, and she said, no, Jim, I really, really think you should become the new chairman. And when the sun came up the next day, there I was. And I'm so happy she did that. It kind of reminded me of what I heard once, not to get overly ethnic here, but as a definition of Irish diplomacy, which is the ability to tell a man to go to hell in such a way that he looks forward to the trip. I think Peg had a little bit of that. So without further ado, we're going to unveil the plaque. And I guess, for the sake of accuracy, we're going to unpaper the plaque. But here we go. And I'll read it. It says, Trustees Room, dedicated to the memory of Margaret Peg Donohue, 1925-2016, whose decades of leadership and devotion assured that the Simsbury Free Library would endure and flourish. So, thank you all for coming.
Jim, thank you so much, and thank you for to the trustees for making this happen and thinking that it was a great idea, because we do too. We're very touched. But we really appreciate all of you who have been so supportive, and you are supporting Mom's greatest gift, her love for the library, and us. And having you here today on the busiest day of the year is just amazing that you would all come. I'm going to ask Father Matera to come and do a blessing on the room, and then thank you all very much for coming. She spent a lot of time at St. Mary's too. This is very important. He understands she spent many, many hours and years at St. Mary's as an advisor as well.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give life, we give thanks for the life and dedication of Margaret Peg Donohue, for all the work that she did for this community, and especially for this library. We now ask your blessing upon this building, and especially upon this room that we dedicate to her. May it always redound to her memory, and may her ideals continue to inspire us. And we now ask your blessing upon us. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.